When I was going to business school and I was studying over there, there was a whole subject dedicated to the psychology aspect. And I used to wonder at that time that, what does psychology actually have to do with management? And today, 3 decades later, I can safely say it's all about psychology. It's all about managing people's mind and their mindsets and getting them to be execution oriented. It's a very tough job, right? So when you look at the scorecard of National Foods, we've always outperformed the market and continue to do so. We are a company which takes pride in getting things done. So we are more of an execution-oriented company. Just to give you a figure, April 15th, because we are listed companies, so our financial closing happens on June 30th. Right? So I came in like 1.5 months before the closing, and I still remember very clearly that the company 1.5 months later finished with a turnover of 180 million rupees, what we call 18 crore rupees in Pakistan, right? Today, I think our perhaps daily sale is much more than that as a company, right? Because we've had, by the grace of God, exponential growth. For us, internationalization is actually a footprint outside. So you become a global company actually. So your ambitions are much bigger. My belief has always been, don't get stuck on a problem actually, right? Keep the ball moving. You gotta keep. Don't park your problems. Don't sweep them under the carpet. Tackle them head on. Take a decision. Move on actually, and make it part of your experience curve.
पाकिस्तान की कॉर्पोरेट हिस्ट्री में, बल्कि दुनिया की कॉर्पोरेट हिस्ट्री में बहुत कम मिसालें ऐसी हैं जहां पे एक सीईओ ने ऑलमोस्ट 3 डेकेड्स तक एक कंपनी को लीड किया हो और उस दौरान उस कंपनी ने 5000 टाइम्स रेवेन्यू की ग्रोथ दिखाई हो। अबरार हसन साहब और नेशनल फूड्स एक ऐसी रियलिटी हैं। नेशनल फूड एक ऐसी मिसाल है कि पाकिस्तान से ग्लोबल स्केल की कंपनीज बिल्ड की जा सकती हैं। इट इज़ आवर डिस्टिंक्ट प्लेजर that Abrar Hasan Saab gave us the time for this interview, and we are thankful to him for sharing his wisdom on leadership and his journey with all of us. Abrar Saab, thank you so much for your time. We're really looking forward to this conversation. And so since we've been here for a while, we couldn't stop but admire the building and how you have kept it. So I thought maybe as a warm-up, we could start with just, our own curiosity. Like, what's the story behind this building?
There's a very interesting story actually behind this building. We've had this building now, I think, for about 3 decades or so. I think, as far as my memory serves me correctly, it was our chairman Majid Saab and my father Abrar Hasan Saab who initially got this building actually from a friend of theirs. And the story is that this gentleman actually was a Pakistani international businessman 30 years ago who made his entire business empire outside Pakistan. And being successful actually, obviously he made a lot of money actually, and he went around all over the world buying, properties for himself. So the story is that because he had so many properties, he obviously had issues of managing these properties. So he came to my father, who was a very old friend of his in Karachi over here, and he approached him and he said that, look, I have this property and I would like you to actually have this because I don't live here, I cannot manage it, and knowing you, I know that you and your company can actually do a good job in managing this property. So that was how we actually came in touch with this property. And the initial years, for the first 15 years or so, I don't know exactly how many years, but something like that, this property was rented from him. And the deal actually was that we do all the upkeep, we pay all the property taxes, we look after all the maintenance charges and stuff, and he would give us very subsidized rent for this thing. So this arrangement worked out very well till the gentleman sadly passed away due to health reasons. And then, of course, his family actually came forward and they offered us that if you would like to buy this property, we would be very happy to do this trade with you. And, based on the upkeep that we have, this has become like really a jewel in our crown. and because everybody who comes here I have never heard anybody actually say anything adverse about this property, and at times we feel extremely proud that this is perhaps one of the best accomplishments that we've had or at least in my tenure of 3 decades that I've been here.
No, so it's very well kept, and that sort of is.
Well, it's not cheap, that I can say, because maintaining heritage properties costs a lot of money, actually. And the only way you can afford it is to actually have your administration or office actually run it, because that's the only way you can actually justify the expenditure for maintenance.
I think it's a great reflection of how you all look at society, I think business in general. Now, sir, let's begin with your own journey. So before joining National Foods, maybe you can tell us about your early days, and we really would like to know if you were really being groomed to join the family business, and what's the backstory of you joining the business. But maybe we can start with your early years.
Okay, so it's not as dramatic as that. It's not as poetic as that either, actually. I think it was a necessity because we've always been a family business, actually. The interesting thing about our business actually is that it's run by 2 separate families who are not related to each other, right? So that has always helped in actually keeping things professional. And one way that this partnership has existed for more than 60 years actually has been on the basis that we are going to run a business from a professional level. So we inherited, when I say we, because I'm talking that I am part of the 2nd generation. We were not the founders, but our fathers actually were. So the 2 families, me and now my partner, Zahid Majid, actually, we've kept this mantra alive in terms of making sure that, how we conduct our business is always done in a professional aspect. Family businesses, in general, actually have a lot of challenges in terms of sustainability, succession. Because we were 2 distinct separate families, we obviously managed this very well because we got away with a lot of stuff that we didn't actually have to deal with because we had a lot of professionalism, a lot of systems development, actually a lot of, let's say, rules and policies actually that were made in the earlier part of our careers, actually. So we inherited a lot of that. We inherited that mindset of the founders. And I've always said in the past, actually, that we were very lucky that we had very able founders, actually, who had a vision. And that actually helped us, at least helped me, actually, because I've always carried that vision forward in terms of values that they proposed. I think one of the things that we're very proud of, actually, in the early years, the founders, they developed a founder's philosophy. And, can you imagine like 30, 35 years ago when, modern management was just blooming, it wasn't really in its full sort of maturity globally. A lot of businesses were developing, especially Pakistan. To actually have this kind of vision from founders who at that particular stage were very aware of equality, professionalism, fair wage, giving back to the environment, giving back to the society, actually. So the whole philosophy 30, 35 years ago was actually coined and written down, which even today exists. Of course, we've tweaked it as we've gone along because things have developed a lot. There are a lot of opportunities that have come across. But this is something which has actually helped us stay very grounded, actually, in terms of how we operate our business and how we deal with others, how we deal with stakeholders and stuff. So respect, good ethics, great values actually is what this company has always been all about. And that's how we actually do our business. We are very, very focused on good ethics in terms of how we practice. And I think today, alhamdulillah, in the market, we are known for our, professionalism and the way that we carry forward our business dealings.
Absolutely, sir. Can you give us some maybe a quick background on the backstory of how the founders met?
So I'm not exactly sure of this because as I was growing up, there was very little information that my father used to share. So whatever I know is that we've heard from the 2 partners because at times they would sit us down and actually give us a little bit of their wisdom. And I think actually that's how we actually sort of picked up. So my father was a graduate from Government College Lahore, and our chairman, Mr. Majid, was a graduate of FC College Lahore. And basically, I think they may have known each other, in the past, maybe before they came into their professional life. But basically, I think they met through business. Actually, my father's, let's say, additional qualification was that he was a test cricketer. He played cricket for Pakistan. So he was not much attuned to business or professional business, actually, right? But when he retired, he suddenly realized that, now I got to make a living for myself. And even when he used to play cricket, there was no professionalism. So they used to play purely as amateurs at that particular stage, and they used to play purely for the country. So there was not much money actually in the game, like we see the commercialization of the sports today in that particular field. So obviously when he retired, he had to become more serious because he had a family, he was married, he had to get going. And he joined the business, and Mr. Majid actually was also part of the business at that time. And originally the group evolved actually from being a textile oriented company. The main business at that time that was set up was a textile indenting house. And Mr. Majid himself was a graduate from Manchester University. And he was the only person who was technically qualified actually between my father and himself to actually take the business forward, which he did. And he established a wonderful business actually by the name of Associated Textile Consultants. And that business itself ran for about 6 decades or so, right? And today that business has transformed itself into being a holding company, because all the success that they had, or let's say the money that they made, actually they continuously invested and diversified. So from the onset, they actually had a group of actually developing a corporation. So that business today actually has become the holding company for the group. And under that, basically, National Food also is an acquisition that was made years ago under that holding company. So the operational side, unfortunately, is something that we had to shut down because of, let's say, the erratic sort of behavior of textile industry in Pakistan. And after running it for 6 decades, we thought that we should concentrate more on what we are interested in, the second generation, which was the food side of the business. So now we've consolidated everything, and a lot of energies and focus has been put into the food side of the business. So I think their meetup really was more on the professional side. Actually, they gelled together, they developed the business together, and it's one of the, perhaps regarded as one of the most successful partnerships by a lot of groups actually who know us, who see us. And I think the secret really has been that we were not related. And this is why the longevity actually has existed and sustainability has existed purely on professional basis.
Amazing, sir. Thank you for giving us that background. Now moving to your own career. So, आपने कब join किया National Foods, and so you didn't join as the MD.
So you had a question about whether I was being groomed actually for the business, right?
Yes.
So I'm coming to that, and I'll actually cover this thing. The simple answer is no. I was not groomed for the business. To be very honest, actually, I was also sort of not as great a sports person like my father was. But I had a lot of affinity for sports. I used to play a lot of all kinds of sports actually at the school level. I was equally good at cricket, but I wouldn't say that it was something that I would have pursued my career, in terms of developing that. But my father also, I think, probably recognized earlier on that I really didn't have much of a talent in cricket, actually. I used to play decent cricket, but not really exceptional cricket. So I think he gave me the best advice, and he said that, look, you should do something else that you like. And again, came a time when I went to university. It was either I look forward to developing a serious professional career, or do I go along that particular side? So I think sense prevailed, good sense prevailed, and obviously I had to say goodbye to a lot of extracurricular activities and focus purely on the professional side of my life. And I went to a university called Purdue, actually in US, and I'm a graduate of the Krannert School of Management from there. And management was something that I really, really enjoyed. Actually, it came as naturally to me. So this was not something that I actually did purely that I had to do it because it was a family business or if I had to join. Given the freedom, actually, I don't really like to do business if you really want the secret, right? But this is something that came naturally to me. You know, the skills were developed. I enjoyed my time at business school. And that was something that I just got it, you know. I mean, I understood these things, that how things work together actually, and that was what I brought back. So when I graduated and came back, obviously the founders at that particular stage were looking to install the succession within the company, and obviously Zayed had, prior to me, had actually joined the business as well. And I think he was at least 2 to 3 years senior to me in the business, and he was working way before me. And when I came in, actually, I didn't come into National Foods. We had these other companies associated with the textile side of the business, and spent a couple of months actually in the holding company. At that time, there was the operations part of it as well. And then after that, I was assigned the responsibility of another group company, which was a textile accessory manufacturing company. So we had like 3 or 4 other companies in addition to National Food. So National Food was the only company which was like unrelated to actually what the group was doing, but that was something that my father was running, because he was not really much of a professional guy who understood textiles. So he needed to do something, and the partners decided to also diversify along this range. So little did we know that, you know, that diversification that happened years and years ago would actually blossom and bloom into a company this big. But I think those were the years where they lay the right kind of foundation. So I wasn't really groomed for the business. I think it was like accidental. I was not put into this business as a CEO to begin with. My father was the managing director actually at that time. The company had become a listed company. I think way back in the mid 80s, actually, the company became a listed company. So when I came into the business, a lot of work actually had already been done. At least the seeds had been sown for making this into a professional company. So the vision was already there. And so I worked in the capacity of a plant director to begin with, where I was looking for the operations. I used to sit at the factory. I got the chance to actually grow with the company, because the company was obviously, I wouldn't say it was nascent actually, because the company originally came into being in 1970s, right? I came into the business, I think 23 years later, actually 1993, I remember exactly. April 15th, probably 1993 was the day that I was brought into the company, and took over as the plant director, looked after the operation side of it, assisted the chairman, assisted my father, and then Zayed worked on the marketing side. I was looking more on the operation side. The company was very small at that stage, and I remember the office in the factory where we used to sit. I mean, it was probably, you know, even smaller than the ground floor of this particular office actually. The entire company actually used to sit on the roof of the plant at that particular stage. But what happened then was actually quite interesting for me, because I was given quite a free hand actually, and this is something that I'm very grateful to the founders actually, especially our chairman Majid Saab. I think the rule actually was that I would get to report to Mr. Majid, the chairman, and Zayed would get to report to my father. And that also kept things very professional, right? Because obviously you have a tendency when you're working with your children or you're working with your father, that there would be some sort of compromise that would take place actually. But here we had to be very careful actually that, you know, we were maintaining the right kind of decorum actually, because we were answerable professionally to it. So I was given a lot of freedom. I think Majid Saab realized actually my skill set, and he gave me the opportunity to develop the management. So, in those 33 years, since then, I'm still evolving. So the management is still growing, it's still evolving. From a handful of people today, the company has grown, mashallah, throughout these 3 decades. But it's not something that I would attribute entirely to my leadership. I think it was the philosophy. It was the philosophy of the group, the philosophy of the family. We stuck to it. We worked together, actually. So the success is entirely attributable to this partnership which has existed. It continues to thrive. We are now, mashallah, into our 3rd generation that we are trying to instill. and that obviously will evolve with time. But the businesses have grown very large. Just to give you a figure, April 15th, because we are listed companies, so our financial closing happens on June 30th. So I came in like 1.5 months before the closing, and I still remember very clearly that the company 1.5 months later finished with a turnover of 180 million rupees, what we call 18 crore rupees in Pakistan, right? Today, I think our perhaps daily sale is much more than that as a company, right? Because we've had, by the grace of God, exponential growth, and we've continuously evolved actually by developing the capabilities of inducting good management people, professionally evolved. There was a time we could not afford good people actually, so a lot of personal time actually went. Myself, my partner, the founding fathers, I mean, we were like all hands on. And those were the early years how we actually evolved and took the business forward. And then over the years, as people came in, people contributed, people left, there was a continuous influx of people that were coming in. But the challenges have been tremendous. So I'm sure I will answer them when you progress forward.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us the whole background. Quite inspirational, and the fact that you spoke about the philosophy. You earlier also spoke about the philosophy. I just want to ask, now that you are 3 decades into the business, sometimes when we talk about Pakistan, it becomes difficult to follow through with some of those things that you stand for, like doing the right thing. It's not that easy. I mean, as an outsider in, if I look at, when I say outside in, I'm not running in a big business. So for big business, there are always challenges. So we can speak about the challenges, but I want to specifically speak about those, what the company stood for, all the good practices. How has that been over the last 3 decades? Has it become easier, or was it difficult to follow in the past? Just again.
I wouldn't say that it's been easy, right? But I've had. I'm quite fortunate that I had a little bit of stint of working outside. I worked for a short while, not for a very long while, but for some very large corporations in the US as well. I was given the opportunity to do internships in European companies as well. So my experience actually is that all businesses have their fair share of issues and problems, right? Pakistan is a growing country. It continues to evolve, right? So I totally disagree with a lot of people who say that, we have unique problems. No, I don't think we do, right? There is a way to approach the problems. But if you have a professional mindset, you will always find the solutions professionally available to you. I think generally people get disheartened very quickly. You have to always realize one thing. You cannot expect that things are going to unfold for you, that people, they know you, so the business will, people will fall at your feet and doors will actually open. It doesn't work that way. You have to work hard, right? You have to work hard. You have to know what the constraints are. You have to know what the boundaries are. You actually have to position your company in that. And you actually have to develop a skill set, making sure that the team that you actually have caters to those particular issues and constraints that are there. And within that, you actually find the solution. So from day one, our mindset has always been, I told you earlier on the question that we always had a professional mindset. And again, our chairman, Mr. Majid, was very adamant actually about this thing. We would go and discuss problems actually with him. And he was a remarkable gentleman actually. He would never come, he was forever the optimist actually, right? He would never ever say that, it's because it's our culture in Pakistan which is like this, or, ये तो पाकिस्तान में होता है, ये हमारी belief है ही नहीं है actually, right? Because like if you, and I personally particularly feel that, a lot of very good things actually exist in Pakistan in terms of the rules and policies and stuff. The only thing is that it takes quite a long time to actually go through those. So let's say the ease of doing business are perhaps a big challenge actually for us. But as far as the rules and policies are concerned, there are some very, very good rules and policies. And the government has always, we've seen that with the right kind of lobbying and working with them, those policies have evolved and they have a tendency to change. Pakistan is economically challenged. We have to realize that things are not going to be actually given to you on a platter, right? So we actually have to work. So yes, it's been hard, but I wouldn't say that they have been a deal breaker. You should look at the scorecard of National Foods.
Right.
So when you look at the scorecard of National Foods, we've always outperformed the market and continue to do so. But it's more on the basis of professionalism and the skill set that we've accumulated within the company. We are a company which takes pride in getting things done. So we are more of an execution-oriented company. So yes, it's very easy to sort of whinge and complain about that maybe the environment is not favorable. But when there were tough times in Pakistan, we evolved. We created an international side of our business. And when I say international, I don't talk about exports. Exports is obviously part of your operation, but actually international business is something that you can also spread. Because the vision has sort of transformed that, we want to be a Pakistani company, but we want to be a very well-known Pakistani company outside. And the dream today actually is that, why can't we become a global, giant-sized company actually, which should be very, very well known in the global arena. And that's not through exports only, but that's through doing proper international business. And mashallah, as things are unfolding right now, I think we are evolving very fast in that particular direction, in addition to our export business.
Amazing, sir. Now we can talk about your own journey, because 3 decades is a long time. Being in the organization, I'm sure you've seen it through all its evolution. So how would you define the last 3 decades for National Foods if we were to break it down into different phases and I'm sure at some point you experienced that exponential growth, but I'm sure there was a lead up to that. So maybe you can take us through how did the organization evolve, in terms of its phases, and if you can maybe list down all, the leader that you had to also evolve as a leader during this time to match. So maybe you can take us through this journey of National Foods itself and your journey as a leader.
So when I actually came into the business in 1993, right, it was very clear to see, coming from a business school as a graduate, learning all the management tools. So I got a completely blank slate to work with. And the situation that I assessed at that particular time was that we had a very poor collection of human resources, right? In fact, the whole organization was concentrated around maybe 1 or 2 managers, right? And the style was a very casual way of actually working. And I clearly realized that the company was very unoptimized at that particular stage. Our financials were very cyclical actually. I mean, in terms of, I couldn't see a continuous pattern. But I think one strong thing that I inherited actually was the sales function. If there was any work that had been done in the past 2 decades prior to me coming on board, actually a lot of work actually been done in driving the revenue and also building the brand. So that was a good foundation that was given actually, and I could work from that. But for me, let's say the first line of attack was actually building the capability within the organization. But little did I realize that building capability never ends. I mean, when you start, I mean, it's an endless job. It continues to evolve and evolve and evolve. So you need to be actually, you have to have your eye on the ball continuously actually when it comes to capability development. And you could see the fruits immediately. The better people you brought into the business, the more professionalism that you instilled, you could see the results come in immediately with that. So when embarked on this particular path, I knew that I had to actually develop the organization and build the capability. So that's where the journey actually started. But the challenge at that time was we were in the market, branded as a SATE company. And, the SATE company is a terminology which in Pakistan is very common because the general feeling with the people who pursue employment actually is that no, we don't want to work over there. Everybody's first choice at that time was always multinationals. Everybody would strive because they knew that they could actually have a career, they would get paid well, and they would be given relative freedom, obviously, and things were more professional actually over there. So that was the first choice for them. So attracting talent into the company became my biggest nightmare, the biggest challenge, because whoever I would interview, whoever I would interact with, they wouldn't want to work for this company. Oh, it's a local company. Oh, it's a state company, actually. So I was faced with this biggest challenge was that, how do I go and change this image? I know we've got potential, but, attracting people has become one of the biggest issues. People would come in, they would immediately be offered a better job, and then they would sort of just leave you and go away. So, and I remember the first line of attack was that, okay, before I can bring people in, I need to set in a human resource department, right? I mean, so you first have to invest in a very good manager. So the challenge actually started over there because I couldn't find a human resource manager. There was no human resource manager who wanted to work with us actually, or wanted to work with a local company. So those were the early years where the difficulty was all about the image. We wanted to be something very big. We had the open mindset, we had the flexibility, but the harsh reality actually was that, the bricks and mortars spoke a different story actually at that time. The numbers spoke a different story at that time. We couldn't afford people actually. So it was a unique experience. I remember when I gave, and I was very inexperienced at that time, only later on to realize that when I came and I thought, you just place an interview with the newspapers and it's very easy. People will apply and you can go through the screening and you will actually have someone. Way back in the early 90s, I don't know if your experience goes back, at that particular time, your advertisement agency would be given the task actually that please develop a newspaper ad, and they would actually receive all the applications, they would monitor, and then they would send it to you, and then that's how things would go. So I remember we put in this ad of a human resource because that was something I learned in business school. For me, this was something new because when I came back, I could see in Pakistan there was no such concept of human resource management. The only human resource management that existed in some formal aspect was multinational companies, right? So they became for us an aspiration that, we want to be we want to be something like them, right? And at least from a professional management perspective. So when the applications came in, this is a funny story actually. And so my first exposure actually was that everybody who applied, majority of the people who applied were either people who had just recently retired from multinationals, right? And in addition to them, majority of the people actually who applied were retired army officers, right? And at that particular time, people didn't understand what human resource management was. They just thought that this was a new management phrase for the much prevalent phrase at that time, which was personnel management, right? So administration or personnel management was what was the coinage at that particular time when I came into the business of how people would manage. And they thought that, having, let's say, somebody from a disciplined institution like army, they could discipline and control the administrative part of it actually. So such was the prevailing understanding of what human resource management way back in the early 90s was. So that was the kind of challenge that I had. And I think we must have had people, about over 100 people who applied. And I could safely say that I couldn't even find one person who actually met my expectations in terms of, here I've come back, I've studied this entire subject in detail. I know, how this thing is going to evolve, and there's not a single person actually who fits the bill. And of course, then there were people who had retired from multinationals and their expectation of a salary was something that we just couldn't afford at that particular stage. So then what I did was, I said, okay, I know a little bit about human resource management. Why don't I hire a very well-educated person, somebody preferably who's come from abroad, who's done his studies, and why don't I actually groom him into sit with him, teach him human resource management, And actually, so that was our humble beginning actually. So we got somebody at that particular stage, developed the person actually, work with him, and a lot of groundbreaking stuff was actually done because at that particular stage, I had only some knowledge, but I started with the basics. I made sure that we developed grades and pay scales within the company. I made sure that, the organization structure, the designs, organization handbook, policy handbook. So those were the very early days of work that was actually done by myself and working with that manager. And that's something that our first generation saw, gave me the free hand actually to do this thing. Slowly, people started coming. And this is a process which has very slowly evolved. In the first decade, you asked me the questions of what happened within the decade. The first decade was all about teaching the market what national food was about, what the vision actually was, what we do as a company, because we were trying to sell. And only now that I'm much more experienced, do I realize that what was I doing in the first decade was really employer branding. It was actually the whole decade went in terms of convincing people, ke yaar aa jao, come work for national food. We have a great vision. We were selling them a dream actually. This was all about. And that was very painful actually, because the evolution was very, very slow. Even if men would come in and work, women would not choose this as, they would not choose, forget about national food, but local companies was something that women would really shy away from. So, had a very difficult time in actually assessing the talent. But then, was consistent with the human resource side, the human resource management. We had many people who came and go. The human resource department flourished. We grew. Over the years, we kept taking decisions. So brick by brick, actually, this company has actually been built. The whole management structures have been built and evolved. Alhamdulillah, 3 decades later today, we have the same level of people actually who work in any organizations. Pakistan's corporate culture has evolved a lot. Human resource management today is very widely practiced. I don't think there is any company in Pakistan which doesn't have a formal human resource management department. But somehow I feel pride that maybe I was part of that era which saw that there was no human resource management. And perhaps maybe in a local company, maybe I took the first baby steps in instilling this thing. And that baby is matured actually today into a young personality, and which continues to evolve and bring in more people. Today we have a very strong employer branding. We have the best of best people actually working for us. And the buck doesn't stop, actually. It continues to evolve. And that has actually helped us. But with this, there was another mantra actually. And that's something that has been my management style, and I've stuck to it 3 decades or so. Because I had a vision in front of me, and I knew that, there is only so much that you can do yourself. So you had to develop a culture based on professionalism, and after professionalism, once the policy framework was developed, you had to start empowering people. You had to work by creating a decentralized structure. So the idea was that, people were given the freedom to take decisions within the framework of the policies that you have. And later on, IABLE chairman also put in the company like a culture of internal audit, because while we give people the freedom and empowerment, then there has to be a process of feedback that should be given to the employees that, this is what the company expects. You are being given a responsibility, but based on that responsibility, you have accountability too, actually, right? So the company had these very strong foundations that, let's say, the second generation came in and put in, and they have taken to evolve. They have evolved over a period of time, and today, those practices are still prevalent. The reason why we've attracted all these professional managers is because they enjoy that freedom that they've got. They have that capability. You have to create that interest in the working environment. There has to be a sense of belonging. All these things are practiced today, and National Food is now, mashallah, known in the market for having a very good employer branding out there. Today we do everything. We participate in all the career fairs and all the big universities and institutions out there. We are regarded as a company which has very progressive policies out there. You cannot be rigid with policies. You cannot be rigid with structure. It has to change with time. As you evolve, you have to bring in, you have to change the design. I think in my 3 decades, I've seen the organization structures change more than maybe, 20 times actually. So that's a very interesting thing for you to change radically your organization design, create more proactive environment in terms of a decentralized culture, has given us the capability to scale. Today, if we are internationalized, it's because of that. So I don't have enough man hours, Zahir doesn't have enough man hours, the board doesn't have enough man hours that they can micromanage. The whole concept of state company actually emerges of not letting go. And when you get into this micromanagement culture, unfortunately, a lot of owner-driven businesses become very comfortable in terms of the business that they create around themselves because they have that control. Our business is completely different. We install control actually through professional systems and management, where we give full freedom and empowerment for decision making. And it's like a systemized way that you develop a vision, then you break it down into goals. You have short-term vision, you have a medium-term vision, then you have a long-term vision, and then people are given that empowerment, and then people are actually judged on their performance on the basis of accomplishment. So we are a company that takes pride that we are an execution-oriented company, and we have to get things done, because only getting things done moves you from point A to point B. And if you're not oriented towards that, the rest is all talk actually, and you don't really progress that far. So I think that has actually helped us working in Pakistan. Pakistan is a difficult place to do business because of the economical challenges, but we've continued to evolve. We've continued to actually develop our organization in Pakistan and out of Pakistan, which has given us the capability to actually grow and grow very well.
Sir, thank you for giving that very detailed background, very useful. The fact that it starts with people, so I think it's a very genuine story from there, and then obviously processes come in. And I also wanted to give you this kind of, coming in, when I started my research, I was so pleasantly surprised to learn that National Foods has touchwood crossed 100 billion. So congratulations. It just speaks about, and I've been part of National Foods story some decades ago, almost 1.5 decades ago, where I think internally the client teams would also get excited about saying that we'll cross these many billions. I think, and now to the fact that you have done 100 billion, kudos to your leadership. I just really wanted your message in context to how you've been doing business as an encouragement for these maybe not so professionalized businesses. Do you actually speak to them? I mean, do you see, you're in Pakistan, you know what the situation is. And I just feel that, it can unlock a lot of value. But what does it take? I'm sure it takes good, strong, fundamental businesses. Like you need to have good revenue stream, good business as a base to be able to invest. But I'm sure there is some level of leap of faith.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to make a correction. We were not the first local company to put SAP, right? The first local company within the food sector to put. At that particular stage, I do remember there were companies, I think Packages Limited had already embarked actually on and putting in SAP. Some of the few companies I remember, Indus Motors actually was another company. But at that time in Pakistan, the SAP execution team was not developed. So the execution used to take place through international countries actually. And that was one of the reasons why SAP was very expensive, because bringing in foreign resources, getting the team to actually work and deploy them in Pakistan. And this was a time where internet and remote working wasn't really available either as an option. It's only today that we can, sit and work from home and stuff. So it was a different era actually at that stage. The real, let's say, SAP really evolved in Pakistan when they took the decision to become global, right? So they set up their operations and an academy at that time. They had the vision. They had the vision to develop. They Through the SAP Academy, they basically developed a lot of the team actually, which is now managing all the thing. So National Food has always been about a company which doesn't hold back. We want to be the first. We want to take the step where nobody has actually gone before. So we are the ones actually, and I take pride in that particular approach, because I think we've opened a lot of doors for the industry as a role model, as an example. And I still remember when the SAP team came to me, actually, we wanted a professional model, because the vision was, we knew if we wanted to scale, become global, we needed a system. We needed an ERP system which would scale, which would have the capability. So prior to SAP, we had some other ERP models which didn't work very well for us. They worked well while we were obviously a smaller company actually, but they didn't really have the capability to scale. So I do remember telling the SAP team, and I said that, look, you guys are coming in, and you need to negotiate with me properly, because what I can give you in return is that I can open the doors for you as a role model, because if we are successful, you will see that SAP will become very favorable. They took that chance on me, and I don't think they ever regretted after that, because we became like the industry spokes person for them actually, and no doubt the system has actually done very well for us and continues to evolve within our organization as well. So we take pride in being the first in a lot many of these things. You know, you interestingly mentioned that you're talking about billions and the revenue and all this particular stuff. You know, it's never the number, right? Number is something, you know, the first vision that I launched was all about achieving this 50 billion rupee turnover, right? And we wanted to do this, like the vision 2020 we had was that by year 2020, we wanted to touch 50 billion. But that was a statement which was developed entirely to keep the organization focused in a particular direction. But the actual vision, the real message behind that vision 2020 was something else, because that was creating the critical mass for us to actually do a lot of interesting stuff. And that's why it had to be coined in such a way that it became an exciting number to chase in everybody. So it became, when I actually put forward this vision 2020, I started seeing this vision 2020 sort of come up in a lot of other industries as well. So that was also first by National Foods in terms of people who realized that this was the vision 2020 that we wanted to have. So it's never about the number. It's always about the message behind that thing, the thought process behind this thing. And that critical mass was achieved, and that made us today, you know, capable of doing a lot of interesting stuff. It's that worth, that enterprise value that was created within the company, that wealth that was created in the company, that gave us the capability to invest and develop further, invest in human capital, invest in a business model outside Pakistan, right? Invest in technology, continuously redeploy that money that we had. Things are now much more focused. The second vision that we actually have is more about whole internationalization aspect, and it continues to evolve. So coming back to the message actually over here is that don't ever chase numbers or profit. These things are results of doing something else. It's a scorecard, right? If you actually have a number in front of you, I think chances are very bright that most of the time you're going to fail. So my message has always been to people that, you know, always do the right thing. The numbers are going to follow automatically, right? It's all about actually setting up the painful brick by brick layering that you actually have to do. You have to first of all work on the base. Then you work on the second layer. Then you work on the third layer. And you keep going on and on. And if you get these things right, everything flows automatically for you. So if you've done the right pyramid building, as I call it, the fruits of the labor actually is what you see today.
Amazing, thank you. I want to also spend two more questions on your own journey as a leader. So one thing that we keep hearing nowadays is this concept of unlearning. Very interesting with this technology, and things are changing, impacting everyone. So, and hence, you know, this concept of unlearning. And they say, while there is relearning also, and learning. Unlearning is the most difficult. And from your experience, can you share any anecdote, any personal anecdote where you had to personally go through your own unlearning?
Yeah, so throughout my life, there have been many stages. And it all sort of stems from the fact that when you are faced with problems, right? Uh, Problems are part of growing. You have to solve problems to move ahead, right? 3 decades later, I think it's that arsenal that you collect in terms of a knowledge base, and that is only acquired through solving problems. So today, when I actually have a problem come up, I immediately know, I had this issue some years back, and that was the solution. So I have a solution straight away because it worked, right? But you have to assess the solution based on the environment actually which exists today. So sometimes you have to tweak the decision making, but that wouldn't have been capable if you didn't build that rich knowledge base into the company. So a leader, actually, a successful leader who's very decision oriented, will build that arsenal around him where he starts developing a knowledge base, his own personal knowledge base, and a knowledge base by enriching the knowledge base of the company that he's leading, actually. So today, National Food is all about the wonderful decisions, the very rapid decisions that we've taken, which has helped us evolve and go forward. All this thing is only possible if you have a flexible mindset, right? And when I was going to business school and I was studying over there was a whole subject dedicated to the psychology aspect. And I used to wonder at that time that, what does psychology actually have to do with management? And today, 3 decades later, I can safely say it's all about psychology. It's all about managing people's mind and their mindsets and getting them to be execution oriented. It's a very tough job, right? And part of that thing is that, you spend a lot of money, a lot of resources in training and development and developing your people. When you do capability building, it's not about hiring the right people, but continuously training and developing them, giving them the opportunity to learn, right? And you have to keep going. Today, we've got a whole academy going on, actually, in terms of, giving training to our people in how to deal with this AI, because AI now is the tool, actually, which is rapidly going to change, or at least for the next couple of years, bring about tremendous amount of change in how we do business, how we approach business. So in order to accept and adopt these technological changes, you have to sort of unlearn, because business is not as usual. But the root cause, or let's say the solution that solves everything, is your mindset. So you actually have to have a flexible mindset to adopt and accept and actually move on.
And so one thing that we've observed, that when you look at any leader, there is this need for every leader to prioritize and say no to things at times is important in that. But that's something I want to ask you, if it came naturally to you, or when did it make sense for you? Okay, we need to focus and I can't be doing all these things. How is that evolution for you? When did that happen for you?
Well, first of all, we are running businesses, we are working within a country, actually, which doesn't have endless resources. So you are resource driven. I mean, you've got a constraint around the resources. If it was so simple, then the richest person in the world would perhaps own everything, right? There would be no other brands in the world, actually, because the one or two people would have the capability of doing everything because, they have endless resources. But it doesn't work that way, right? Being constraint driven gives you the capability that you actually have to say no. And you have to say no quite a lot of times, actually. And a good leader actually will not hesitate, because that's two letters, actually, which helps him actually maintain his vision and stay on track. If we look at it from a humorous way. So it unfortunately is not liked by a lot of people, but it's very necessary.
And speaking of doing the right thing and doing it for your professional leaders out there, out there at National Foods, what we also learned is that in order to keep everyone aligned to the vision and the capability and capacity of the business leaders to be there is apparently a leadership program that is being led by National Foods to make sure that everyone is aligned. So my question is, in context to doing the right thing for the business leadership at National Foods, what has been the company's history? Is this leadership program something new, or this has always been a part?
So this is a very interesting question you've asked because it's taken me down the memory lane. And there was a time actually when I completely stopped. I completely stopped all sorts of training and development within the company because something was making me very uncomfortable. I was looking at the level of human resource practices that we had. That has changed a lot, in these 3 decades as well. There was a period within our company where, we were very ordinary HR company. We were not exceptional. There came a stagnant period actually, right? And within that period, it made me very, very uncomfortable because the kind of training that I was seeing wasn't leading anywhere, right? It was, just run of the mill because there were companies which are offering training courses actually over here and everybody wanted to do that, right? And then I started seeing a pattern actually emerge of the same kind of trainings actually happening again and again and again, and I started to question my leaders actually within the organization that, have you ever measured the measurable benefit of the amount of resources that we're spending on training and what is it actually resulting in? And I couldn't get an answer for that. So I stopped it. I stopped the training for a while. And I think that was the best thing that I did because it really forced us to do a deep introspection of what we wanted to see the capability within our organization. Made us do some very interesting projects actually then. And since then, what has actually evolved, we are now perhaps spending much, much more money than we ever did actually on training and development, but it's all very meaningful. It's all very focused actually. It's all in line with the vision that we have and leadership development program that we have. I myself actually had to go on a global CEO program, which I did personally. So it's not something that's only for employees, it's for me as well. I mean, you never stop learning, you have to continuously learn. As long as it's done for the right purpose, training for the sake of training or any management for the sake of just doing it does not actually give you results. It has to have a purpose behind that.
आप जिस बिजनेस में हैं उसको आपने भी एक जगह पे ये रेफर किया कि ये रिस्क का बिजनेस है. So and I think risk के बिजनेस में जो another term that we come to here is about responsible growth. The question here is that for you, when it comes to balancing your ambition and what the capability or the potential is, how do you, for you, what is responsible growth?
Yeah, so obviously when you run a business, you want to operate, and I think I took some time in explaining to when we started this conversation of the values that we actually had. Because we wanted to do business with a purpose. And the purpose was very important actually because we were manufacturing food items which consumers, human beings, are going to consume, right? So it became our duty, our mantra obviously, to produce the very best quality products. And this is part of a founder's philosophy that I was referring to very early on. These were the rules of engagement that were set and were given to the employees, and the leaders subscribe to it even today. So there's a huge responsibility. When you're manufacturing food, you actually have to ensure that the food that you produce is pure, flavorful, has very high nutrition values. You need to be aware of the fact that it doesn't have any hazardous items in there which could actually cause any kind of health-related issues that you have. Also, by strongly focusing on nutrition, you're playing a very important part of nation building. So we have to ensure that our ambitions and objectives have to be balanced. It's not profit over people, and it's not people over profit either. You do need profit to actually run a business. It's all about sustainability. The whole triple bottom line, as they call it actually, the whole CSR initiative, the ESG initiative that we have. In order to run that, it's important to make money. Right? But it's what you do with the money is what is most important. The idea is not to pocket the money. The idea is not to make yourself rich and rich and rich. You remember I told you, if you do the things correctly, things come automatically for you. But it's that responsibility that you have to continuously redeploy, make sure that you are investing in the right technology to make your food production better, to make sure that your quality even improves better. The nutritional value that you have, the products that you design contain the right kind of nutrition. Today, when we have internationalized a business, this thing has become even more relevant for us because we are governed, and thank goodness for that. We are governed the way that we do business by regulators, right? There are agencies out there who regulate the food. There are food standards out there. How you run your company, you've got regulators actually which govern how you should be running your business actually within that framework. Sometimes, you get really frustrated actually because you lose quite a bit of freedom. But when you zoom out and actually look at the broader cause that you actually have, it's fabulous actually. It's important to actually have somebody which creates external rules of engagement for you and make sure that you are there. The unfortunate part actually is that they can't get everywhere. And we have, at least in Pakistan, we have a huge business that operates, under the radar actually. They don't adhere to rules and regulations and stuff. And, while it certainly creates a lot of resentment on our part is that why aren't the regulators playing their part over there? But they just can't, they don't actually have the resources. But then you have to look at it positively because we are doing much bigger business than them. Of course, they do take away a lot of share. They do create a lot of, especially this whole culture of counterfeit goods which are being produced out there. This is something that the regulators are dealing with actually out there. But it's important to realize that these people are playing a balancing factor. They're also ensuring that they continuously challenge you so that you are doing the best that you can. And again, I always tell people, look at our scorecard. And you look at our growth, it's exponential. Mashallah, the profits that we're making are continuously being deployed in people, technology, people's capabilities, their emoluments and stuff. So there is a fair way that we distribute our profits and we do it responsibly. We're also spending a considerable amount of money on promoting the society in which we live, the environment that we work in. The more money we make, we have to stay committed to actually help our country and the workplace that, the place that we work in actually, more beneficial for people. So it's all about responsibility. And this was something also started by the regulators years and years ago. There are, companies out there which have been set up to actually help businesses. We are members of a lot of these business groups, being members of chambers, Pakistan Business Council, a lot of other bodies actually, professionally participating with them actually exchanges a lot of knowledge base. Yeah. And being part of a culture where you are also challenging the regulator is equally important because that also improves the quality of business that is going to be done within this country.
Amazing, sir. And speaking of Pakistan Business Council and chambers that bring business interests together, I listened to your talk on Pakistan Business Council's one of this forum on where I think they had partnered with Pakistan Agricultural Coalition, and that's where you shared the case study of seed to table, and I found it to be quite interesting and exciting at the same time. Interesting because a challenge led National Foods to start planning to work on resilient supply chains. And at the same time, the way you presented, I got a sense which is exciting is that maybe this challenge led you to discover an opportunity which is quite available out there, where you said that if you do things with planning and you do proper planning and you go after these opportunities, there is a massive opportunity out there. So I just want to ask you about this backstory of seed to table, and where is the story right now? And and from my own research, I've discovered that maybe you'll park that as a separate business. So maybe you can talk about how that happened.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I'll start by saying that nothing irritates me more when somebody tells me कि ये पाकिस्तान में हो ही नहीं सकता. So for me, that's a challenge actually. It has to be done, right? And my experiences have shown कि पाकिस्तान में सब कुछ हो सकता है. It's the approach, how you actually take it forward. And look, everything, I would say also that one of the reasons for our successes is that we're very research oriented and we are research driven as a company. So we don't take our decisions on hearsay. I mean, every problem is actually properly researched, and then, a solution is designed, and then that's how we pursue it. So this entire thing actually also came as a problem, and this problem actually emerged during the COVID times when Pakistan faced quite a lot of economic challenges where imports were stopped. And part of our sauces production relies a lot on tomato import, which we're importing from China. And when we saw that the LCs were constrained and they were not being opened, we were very lucky that during COVID times we saw this beforehand, so we imported actually about a year's stock. But then it was very clear to me that once this stock finishes and the situation does not abate, then what is going to happen? So we actually had to go on an import substitution aspect. And then, of course, at that time I was also a director and member of Pakistan Business Council, and one of the focus at that time was make more and grow more actually in Pakistan, and the whole encouragement of Pakistan Business Council was to develop the local industry. And one way to improve the economy was to look at import substitution, because we have a very high import bill, and I think it's important and responsibility for all businesses to see that how they can do import substitution so the economy becomes more buoyant actually, and our balance of payments improves actually over here. A lot of companies unfortunately have obviously different challenges, and let's say they don't have enough incentives to actually produce or manufacture locally, and that's the whole reason why the supply chain development actually will remain a challenge and remains a challenge, because the government has to focus on changing the policies. But anyway, come to our unique problem. We took this as a challenge, and one was obviously this imminent challenge that what happens if tomorrow we don't have foreign exchange available, that we can't. But then another need that brought about this reason why we wanted to go in this direction was also the international regulations. Our agricultural practices, I wouldn't say are very competitive in terms of quality. The farming produce that we have is certainly not of that kind of quality that organizations like us, the people who are converters, manufacturers who use these as input actually, would safely meet regulatory standards. And we would have a lot of incidents of our products being challenged in the international arena, because globally the regulations were getting stricter and stricter and stricter. And it became very evident that, the current practices within the agricultural field will not be able to produce the fruits and vegetables that you grow over here as the input source would probably not meet the standards actually. So we had this challenge in front of us that, we know a lot. We know the final quality of our product. Why can't we break it down step by step and work backwards and go down all the way to the seed level, so that we can actually develop the seed, improve the farming practices, have the right value chain where the farmer makes money, because he has to make money in this entire value chain for it to be sustainable. And then we basically improve ultimately the overall quality. And not only have we tackled the import substitution problem, but by having a quality and the value chain which is competitive, we start to export. So there were multiple challenges actually in there. So we designed this particular project, and we were sort of very surprised at the level of skill and the kind of knowledge base that existed, because once it became common in the market that National Food is doing this thing, remember I told you, do the right thing and everything happens for you. So when we embarked on the right thing, actually the stakeholders came to us automatically. So there were people who had the technology with them. There was seed technology actually available that started getting developed. There were drones, satellite available, modern practices in monitoring agriculture. The right kind of people who had knowledge on the fertilizers and the fumigants that are to be used, such fumigants which leave no residue actually, which would make us meet the standards. And all these people came together because they became excited, because an enterprise like us became the nucleus and started leading. The result of that thing was we started with a pilot project with about 500 acres. What we do is we call it, it's like a corporate farming. We aggregate farms, we don't own any farms. We did this 500 acre experiment, and what resulted in was local produce, which was very good quality, in terms of what was grown. And the yields that we got actually were far more superior than what the typical average of Pakistan traditional. So the tomatoes that are grown in Pakistan at best, the yields are between 8 to 15 sort of tons per acre. And I think we peaked at about 42 tons per acre with our. So when you do things properly, you have stakeholders, knowledge base available who help, and you have to work as a team. So the shared vision which was there, everybody worked together and we saw a fantastic thing emerge. So we beat, when we converted these tomatoes into tomato paste, locally manufactured tomato paste, and we did the comparison, I think we beat Chinese imported tomato paste by $400 per ton. So again, the aspect is that, that gave us the motivation, the confidence that, hey, we can do this thing particularly. So then we sort of spun this out. Actually, National Food wasn't interested because it sort of conflicted with the business model, because our business model is very focused in different things. And the board decided that they don't want to pursue this within the company. So I took it as a personal challenge, actually. So it's got nothing to do with National Foods, but more of a personal ambition. I mean, in terms of how it's been started and how it's been carried forward. So hopefully, the message over here is that would definitely love to see it add value to Pakistan's agricultural practices, and ultimately, if it results in greater exports for the country, so be it.
Amazing, sir. There was a question here which was about the lessons that other entrepreneurs and Pakistani businesses can learn from National Foods for those who want to go out of Pakistan. Although you've spoken about some of these things, I just wanted to give you an opportunity that if you want to speak specifically about the lessons that they see.
Yeah, what has actually helped us, there's no one formula that you can apply to everybody. I think we take inspiration from other people and their business models as well. So that's also part of learning. I mean, for me, there are a lot of businesses out there, in addition to ours, who've been very successful actually. And really looking at them and their practices is also a source of inspiration and gives the opportunity to learn. So one must always have an attitude of learning, appreciating people who are better than you, actually looking at what they have done, which has worked, and making sure that you are constantly correcting. And one such aspect is that I find the businesses in Pakistan are so fixated on a culture of working within the space, and then of course export orientation. For us, internationalization is not exports. For us, internationalization is actually a footprint outside. So you become a global company actually. So your ambitions are much bigger. So apart from having Pakistan as your market, you have a much bigger market space out there. It also challenges you a lot more because you have to deal with cultures. You have to deal with a lot of political geographies actually out there. The challenges are far greater when you're operating outside Pakistan. If you think Pakistan is tough to operate in, trust me, there are a lot of other countries also which bring about a lot of challenges, because you have to learn the culture. From country to country, the culture is different, and you have to adapt, you have to change, you have to develop structures like that. The management practices have to be flexible. They actually have to change. But the broader objective, the message over here is that, develop a vision where you're not constrained in only one geography. Actually, it's important to do that. At the end of the day, you are recognized outside as a Pakistani company that made it, right? We see a lot of other corporations in the world who've become global brands. Their brands are very well known. You go anywhere in the world and you will see. We are still facing that challenge within Pakistan. We don't have any global brands. And I think this is where the mindset actually has to change. And we need to develop business models. The vision has to be developed like that, so that we become a global company and we participate in an arena. And that's where we can do our country proud, where our country will become known. I'll give you an example. When we internationalized, we were very well known in Pakistan as the company, as National Food, the people. But when we went outside, it was a new game. Nobody knew us. National Food, who? I mean, nobody would care actually, right? But through our practices, through our consistent, philosophy that we imparted, we managed. I wouldn't say that we've still become very big out there, but within the arena of stakeholders who work with us outside and international stakeholders, global companies who work with us, I think a good respect for National Food, its practices, its management, its people, the brand is now beginning to get more noticed actually out there. But this is a journey which is perhaps going to continue beyond my lifetime. And this is something that I hope that this brand and this company, it truly deserves to be a much bigger company than what it is today. I know that during my 3 decades, I had the opportunity of taking it from one point to another point. And if I do step back actually shortly, at least I have the satisfaction that I'm leaving behind a very good scorecard actually, and that scorecard can be built for even more bigger and better things for the future generations to do.
Inshallah, sir. And now, sir, is there anything where you think Pakistani companies of Pakistan origin or companies in Pakistan can come together to collaborate, to contribute towards the collective future of the country?
I think we already do that. There are fantastic organizations out there. I think these kind of organizations tend to, unfortunately, develop. There's a very strong tendency to develop a protectionism culture actually out there. I think that is something that we should avoid. Actually, we should work on a broader, message out there, which is, as you pointed out, the right kind of collaboration, and the focus should really be the country, actually, Pakistan. And yes, of course, you want to obviously do well and excel in the country itself, but you actually have to have much more bigger, broader challenges and goals out there in terms of, and you can only be sort of recognized if you actually have the right kind of collaborative sense and everybody is actually working together with that common message. And I saw this thing in Pakistan Business Council, to be very honest. The whole focus was developed about, make more, grow more. Actually, they even adopted the agricultural practices. Actually, I think a lot of Pakistan's economic salvation lies in improving the agricultural practices. So I'm very happy to see that evolve now in Pakistan, and the government itself is taking it very, very seriously, and they have realized that that's the particular aspect that can fuel the domestic side of it. And of course, then carry on with your ambition and desire to also internationalize and do more exports. So it's about time that Pakistan sort of left its mark in the world in a very, positive, participative, collaborative way.
Looking back at your journey of 3 decades, what has given you the greatest sense of satisfaction?
I would say my biggest satisfaction actually is that when I started professionalizing the company, the biggest comfort I get actually is when I see people's careers develop right in front of my eyes. When you give people the chance, you empower them, you actually give them the capability to participate, actually take decisions, make sure that their voices are heard, and how their career journeys actually evolve. And I've seen this, people who work with us, people who have left us, how they've thrived, people when they left us and how they've thrived, and from a lot of stuff that they learned from within this company. This is a journey. And that journey for me, actually, not for me only, but for the people who've been associated, the stakeholders who have been associated with us. And it's not about the employees, it's also about the stakeholders who work with you, actually, the suppliers who work with you. I've seen them grow, actually, with our business. So, that growth is not just for National Foods, it's for everybody, actually, who've been associated with us. And that is extremely satisfying as a leader, actually, to see, people develop their careers, their own livelihood, actually, on that basis. And I hope as long as I am there, if I can make a difference. And this is the economic empowerment, actually, that has to be. This is also part of a responsibility initiative, because you have to see your people thrive.
Amazing, sir. And now looking ahead, what are you most excited about? Like, what's next? You talking about international business as well?
Yeah, so I have worked obviously in the operations and management field for a very long time. Have a lot of management experience. Now I think I'm coming to a stage in my life where obviously this baton actually has to be passed on. And now my nature would probably become more entrepreneurial, actually, even more. So management skills that have been learnt have now got to be deployed, actually, and maybe through entrepreneurial ventures. So quite excited about that thing. Operations is something that you have to have your eye on the ball all the time. So you don't get much time You cannot be very creative because you have a huge responsibility towards your shareholders, your stakeholders, your people. All these commitments are there. But now, once you sort of detach from that and you become more entrepreneurial, it gives you the capability of becoming creative. And I'm looking forward to that, actually. So some interesting ventures, exciting ventures, a lot of ideas, actually. And let's see how they shape up.
Russell, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And I hope we get to do this at some point in the future as well. And I hope we get ourselves organized better to make better use of the experience that holds itself individually. And I think for collective good, this is gold. So thank you so much.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's indeed been a true pleasure talking to you, and answering these questions has given me a reflection of the life that I've lived up to so far and some of my beliefs. One doesn't tend to think about these things till you are questioned, and I think you gave me the capability to go back into all those years and think about a lot of things that were done, some good, some bad. Obviously, a lot of things didn't work either, actually, but we are only talking about the good things. You have to realize that you are human at the end of the day, and don't be scared of taking decisions. They will be right and they'll be wrong, and that's why it's important. I always say, keep the ball moving, actually. And ultimately, it's what happens is at the end, what you accomplish, what you leave behind, obviously, is going to be for my output is going to become somebody else's input in the future. So I just hope that I've given him enough input, actually, where he or she can take the company to much greater heights, actually. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and wish you the best.
Thank you.